All righty. Thank you all for joining us today for our webinar, Creating a Seamless Traveler Experience Using Generative AI. My name is David Sudbey, and I am an advisor for ASAPP. For those of you unfamiliar with ASAPP on the call today, ASAPP is an AI native technology company focused on helping contact centers unlock their value, minimizing costs and inefficiencies, improving agent compliance, productivity, and experience, while surfacing actionable insights to help you deliver a world-class customer experience. Today, we also have Infosys partnering with us on this webinar. Infosys is helping the travel and hospitality industry reimagining the customer experience to provide a seamless, frictionless, and joyful experience to travelers. Infosys is leveraging Gen AI technologies to create the next frontier of customer experience. And then today, we also have 5 amazing panelists joining us today. We have Kim from American Airlines. We have Francesca from Booking.com. We have with us Casey from Marriott International. We have Karen Bell-Wright, who is a customer experience executive and former executive at a large airline. And she brings us that experience as well. And we have Kumar from Infosys, who's head of global travel and hospitality and professional services. So I thought what I would do today, just to get us going, I thought I'd share a personal story. December 24th, 2022, my wife and I were sitting in the hotel connected to the airport that I have been traveling in and out of for decades now. We had an early flight out the next morning, connecting through a major airport, and then off to Mexico. We were hosting our daughter's dream destination wedding. We were thrilled. Our outbound flight was scheduled for 6 a.m., and I had plenty of time to make our connection. As a seasoned traveler with millions of miles under my belt, I felt comfortable that it would all go well. I even had a couple of days buffer in there should there be any interruptions. At 8:30 p.m., I am obsessively checking my flight to see if it's all good, like one does. And I realized the connecting flight was canceled. I try to connect with the airline to get rebooked, but I can't reach them through any channel. After an hour or so goes by, I notice my itinerary has us rebooked, which was good. But what was not good is we were rebooked after the wedding that was to take place, that we were hosting. Still, I can't reach the airline. Panic sets in. Emotions run high. We scrambled for hours, and we were able to get myself and my wife each a single seat, mind you, different airlines, different flights, but we got rebooked. My wife spent Christmas in that airport hotel, and I spent Christmas by myself in LA, where I had to overnight to get a connection to our final destination. The good news is we got there safely. The wedding was perfect. However, we spent thousands of dollars out of pocket and did all the work ourselves to get us where we needed to be. I share this story to get us all in the frame of mind of a traveler. Travel is emotional. Supporting travelers is expensive and often tough on the call center, resulting in huge variable costs, employee burnout, all of which have an impact on the brand. If I was able to get through to the airline that night, the customer service rep would have had a tough call in their hands, admittedly. Likely, they would have had several back-to-back difficult calls, resulting in a poor employee experience on top of what was admittedly a difficult customer experience I was having in the moment. So with that as just sort of to get us in the mood of a traveler, I'd like to just get us all, well, I'd like to kick us off with a question. And Karen, I'm going to ask you to help us out to start. And the question is, what strategies are in place to ensure uninterrupted support for travelers, especially considering the global nature and time zones involved in travel? If you could help us out there, Karen, and then others have anything to share, you can please do so. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, Dave, you really gave us a tough one to start with. I mean, that sounds like a travel nightmare. So thanks very much for that. I think I think it's really difficult because disruptions do happen in the airline business. They happen in many different travel areas. But how we handle them and how the staff are prepared for them are two different things. So based on what you've talked about, the number one thing is to be as available as possible, to anticipate and to recognize and to identify a customer when you can. So in that instance, for example, if inbound is really, really saturated, start with proactive communication outbound, because I think one of the biggest challenges customers have today is they're stuck in an airport and they don't know what to do, and they don't know that the airline sees them. They don't know that they're on their radar. They don't know if they're being helped. So communicating as quickly and as often as possible, even with I recognize you, I see you, we're doing everything we can to help you. But I think it goes broader than that too, from a global perspective. I think we really have to look at the overall consistency of service. Everybody has to be geared up for that. The people in the airport have to partner people in the contact centers with the people on board. And I think there's a lot to be said for really practicing and honing your skills on what your service strategy is in those instances. And also on a good day, what does good look like, and make sure that everybody partners together and supports each other. And I think, as we talk about AI, AI is a tool that we can help to fix some of these things, but the focal point really has to be, how are we trying to service our customers today? And that should always be the priority.
That's wonderful. And Kim, did you have anything to add?
I would love to share a little bit. First, I'm sorry that happened to you, but I think in these cases, this is when we can talk about how AI can be particularly helpful when we're thinking about developing tools and technologies to help for those unpredictable components of travel, and ways, as Karen said, that we can be proactive. And so many things, in the airline industry or with air travel can be out of our control. So we need to think about how we can support our customers. And what better way than with an impact in weather? So at American Airlines, on our journey of AI, we actually introduced machine learning to assist in these unpredictable times. So we introduced a tool more recently called HEAT, HEAT, so Hub Efficiency Analytics, to protect our operation when weather impacts our hubs. So if there was a weather event that almost stopped you from getting to your daughter's wedding, this tool actually looks at real-time data on customer connections, weathers, air traffic control, all of the different components that could go into impacting a flight. And it feeds that information to our heart of our entire operation, our integrated operations center. And what it does is it's looking at all the timing of the storms, and it's retiming our flights around the actual storms, and it shifts our schedules around weather events so that we can get our crew members and our customers on their way much faster and minimize those delays and cancellations. So we can use that machine learning and really positively impact the customer's experience. And just for some fun facts, we deployed this enough times last year that it prevented more than 700 cancellations at DFW, here at DFW, one of our hubs, and Charlotte, one of our other larger hubs. And we're already on our way of positively impacting over 200 this year so far. So I think these are good cases when in the airline industry, how can you make travel more seamless, and how can we use that machine learning or AI? How can we continue to iterate in this space so we can do even more? And with a weather event headed our way in DFW tonight, we're on our way to help save more of those delays and cancellations.
Bravo to you. Well done using machine learning to get ahead of these things, right? And in full transparency, none of the brands represented here had anything to do with my story. I just knew it would get all of our blood boiling. So thank you for bearing with me as I told my story. And the important thing is we got there safely. And I know that's a big thing that's important to all you companies. So thank you all for your thoughtfulness in trying to get ahead of these things. And one thing that I want to just ask you a little bit more. So with heat and looking at the weather impact, and by the way, truth be told, it was a weather related thing for me too, which I know the airline has nothing to do with, right? But you're on the downside of that. You're on the downstream effect of weather. So in my case, of course, they didn't know that I was hosting a wedding for my daughter and I already paid, I bought out the hotel. They didn't know any of these things, right? So is it unfair, or could we be creative and get innovative to do some level of personalization that I could think of? Maybe in a perfect world, there's an attribute on a record that says wake, funeral, wedding, whatever. And maybe I'm dreaming, and I'm sure you could do some of that through brute force, which I also know means expense, right? Like you do things manually, it creates a lot of expense. Does anyone have any thoughts on my dream of having an attribute in a record that can do some level of personalization where you might be able to white glove an experience like that?
Yeah, I'll jump in there, David.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Personalization is a big driver, certainly for us. I think for us to really benchmark and make sure that we're ensuring our customers feel understood, cared for when they come through to us, providing as much information and visibility to our customer service support team so that when the phone is picked up, if there ever is an issue, they know what they're traveling for, why, and some of the challenges that they come up against. Obviously, the goal really is to be able to provide self-service or proactive outreach, right? So they never actually need to come through to us. But if there is that need, 100% understanding how they're interacting with us, what they've booked for, why they're going, who they're going with. Is it family that they're booking for this time, or is it business they're booking for this time? They're very different services that each one needs, right? So if you're booking because you're going to a conference, if you're going to call customer services and there's an issue, the resolution you want is going to be very different from if you're booking a holiday with your family, or in your instance for, a wedding to be attended. So personalization, I think there's a lot we can do there. And part of the main driver there is making sure that we can provide as much visibility and push as much knowledge to our agents as possible, so that when anybody does come through, they know what the next actions are and they can predict what they want as a resolution and think one step ahead. That then does give as much comfort as we can do in the difficult situations. Let's face it, by the time someone comes through to see us, it's normally because there's an issue, not because they're wanting to talk about the positive things.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And
Dave,
thank you.
Can I also add?
Please do. Yeah, you were good. Yeah.
I think, that whole, customer touch point ecosystem could also be expanded. So, yes, your vision sounds great, but imagine if everybody in that interaction chain also had that information. So yes, a contact center agent could have it, but I think ideally, every step of that journey, the airport staff also have that information. And when you get on board, they're also able to recover. So I would go as far as we could in that space and really see that every touch point is, has this customer in crisis on their radar. That would be, perfect in my opinion.
I love that. And that sounds like something that Infosys could help us with. And so in a little bit here, Kumar, I'm going to bring you in. I've got a couple of things for you, but I'll also give you a heads up to think about what Karen just touched on, because you can imagine the scene where maybe I booked everything through a third party, right? Booking agent, booking.com as an example, right? And so I did that with hotel, I did it with car service, I did it with airline, all through that. And when it happened, wouldn't it be nice that the hotel was made aware and my car service was made aware and everyone? So sort of the downstream. And I think about this is there's probably some opportunities if APIs, don't exist today to do that. There might be a process optimization thing. So everyone doesn't get a heads up to think about an answer in a few minutes, Kumar, but maybe that's a tricky one. So maybe give that some thought for a little bit later here. So thank you, everybody, for that. And Francesca, I'm going to come back to you. We may have already touched on it, right? But I'm going to ask the question as we had it teed up. In your role, where do you see an opportunity for innovation, just broadly, even before folks start down the path of AI, right? Because AI is important. And one of the first things you need to do is really document your current processes kind of as is and put together the strategy of the to-be state and the things that need to be done. But before you even start down that path, is there opportunity to do things differently today just to deliver innovation quickly? Any thoughts from you, Francesca?
Well, I'm actually going to draw from what you were talking about a moment ago. And because for us, you said, booking.com, one of our drivers is to provide the connected trip. We do provide multiple different verticals and which sell, accommodations to flights, to cars, to taxis. And for us, when a customer books with us, it's an experience they're booking, right? They're not seeing it that they're booking individual products. And so from a strategy perspective, in terms of what innovation is needed, it's to just get alignment across those various different verticals in terms of how do we want to engage. But we have to face it, flights industry is very different to the accommodations industry. The policies that are involved there are very challenging and not aligned often. So how can we make sure that we're setting ourselves up to provide solutions where we can give that seamless experience? So if something comes up, let's say accommodation as overbooked, or there's a challenge with the particular hotel, or a flight gets delayed and there's a knock-on consequence on something else, making sure that we're aligned in terms of how are we going to serve those situations and how are we going to resolve those, and align some of our policies and processes in order to do that. Once we've got alignment with that, we can then look at how can we set ourselves up to be confident enough to experiment with some of these. And how can we make sure that we're learning and understanding what works and what doesn't fast, so that we can then align in terms of what do we want to really focus on? What are the capabilities that are our priorities? What are our maturity levels there? What are we learning from how the customer is engaging with us? And then what are the bases that we need to set up to be successful across the various different verticals? And that may start off in one particular area, but with an oversight of where we want to go across all of the different platforms and verticals based on one particular prioritized capability. The other piece for me is really data is key, right? Nothing in terms of AI can be implemented unless you have the data alignment and understanding of how you want to be interpreting your customers' interactions with you, how you want to be solving back to them, how you want to be reading, what you want to make available. So obviously there needs to be a lot of innovation and alignment and standardization in terms of how you're setting up your data in order to serve the AI piece. So a lot of free work is needed in those spaces, and we're quite early on in our journey in AI. So we are focused in a lot of the foundational pieces at the moment.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And you touched on something that I think is really important, and just want to ask maybe some of the others for you. Mentioned, I don't know if it was your words exactly, but you have to have once you do the pre-work, then you have to have the nerve to move forward and actually do things differently. And that nerve, it has to be with confidence on the business case. It has to be confidence on that you're going to achieve the outcomes, which will drive the economic benefit to allow you to invest in such things. Does anyone else want to share anything around the nerve, developing the nerve to move forward, to actually, in some cases, it's early days, right? And so there's opportunity for first mover advantage here. And I just was thinking out loud here, and pardon me if we could move on, but does anyone want to talk about the nerve to actually move on and dare to be different and do something different?
Yeah, I think it's really important in our environment that we have a fail fast. It's very agile, being able to say you don't have to come to the table with a comprehensive solution from end to end. And we're going to launch it in a waterfall approach where we hope that it just works or it doesn't. I really love the culture nowadays that everyone can just come up with ideas. We can test and tune and test again, and really be able to have the courage where we can celebrate together as well. So I think it's taking on what are those core values for our customers. Yeah, and I think that it was mentioned earlier, if we know what is most important to our customers on feeling safe and valued, and that we appreciate their loyalty, then in turn that really drives what is our charter? What type of things are we going to produce for them, whether it's through technology or the experience with our frontline agents. I think that as soon as we can build that culture out, that is what lends a hand, so that even the quietest person in the room is willing to lean in and come up with those ideas and share. and everyone can build on top of those together.
I love that. I love that. Great way to lead. You know, the individuals that are on the front lines every day are the ones who are in the middle of this, right? And they know what needs to be done or what could have a positive impact. And I think it's super important to have that listening post, so to speak, and listen to them, right? That's wonderful. Anyone else before we move on to the next question? On the nerve topic, the guts.
And I'll just add something. I think that I think we also have to recognize that customers are quite forgiving and they like to be involved, and they like to know if you have an innovation and you want to try something, you go to your loyal customer, your customer base, and you say, listen, we're trying something new. Do you want to experiment with us? Do you want to try this? And I found in the past that they're overwhelmingly willing to support and to try new things. So sometimes even agents absolutely have a finger on the pulse on what's going on in the organization, but I think customers also, you'll find a good group of them who will contribute and lean in and want to be involved in something new. Particularly as AI is so popular, that would probably be, you get a lot of good support on that.
I really like what you said, Karen, because we can get inputs and focus groups and information from our customers and our associates, but it is also an opportunity to take all of the data that AI can bring together to say, did you know? We wouldn't be able to talk to enough people for what AI can gather, but being able to marry the two together to give that information and then have those dialogues can be really meaningful.
Wonderful. Great conversation. We could go on just on that topic alone, but we only have so much time in the day, so we'll move on. So to Kim, what is your AI strategy, or framework, however you want to look at it, and how is it being used to help your employees be more effective? Because I touched on earlier my viewpoint of customer experience and employee experience being intertwined. So it'd just be good to, you can check me on that if you think I'm off base, but I'd like to know what you guys are thinking about specifically with AI.
No, I completely agree. And it really is your employee experience leads to the experience that your customers are going to have. So at American, our strategy around AI, including, as we think about generative AI in the future, centers around how do we make customer and team member interactions simple and effective, back to basics. How do you make it easy to understand and easy to consume? And being in the airline industry, it's an ever-changing industry. And in this post-pandemic world, not only have our customer issues that we face today, they're quite different than we faced yesterday, and will continue to change, but our customers themselves have changed. And so how can we use then AI to think differently? So I loved what Casey was just talking about, being in a world where we can fail fast. So you have to be willing to think big when it comes to AI so that we can detect those trends. We understand the emerging topics faster than we could ever do so manually. And then we have to start small. We have to find ways to use AI to facilitate access to the information, and then learn fast, fail, adapt, and keep going. So we have at American a really highly experienced and knowledgeable travel professionals, I'll say, and team members. But many of our customers have unique needs. So imagine if you did some call listening for some of our contact center calls, you could have one customer calling about a weather delay or cancellation, and the next call could actually be a customer saying that they need to travel from, let's say, an international destination to somewhere in the States, and they have a cello and they have a surfboard, and how can they bring something like that or both of those on board? And your next call could be something around an unaccompanied minor or pet in cabin or needing to bring a wheelchair. All of those different use cases have different information that you need to provide to those customers. So how can we ensure that our travel professionals have that information to address all of those unique cases with an accurate answer, and without having to pour through just pages and pages of rules and regulations when it comes to the airline industry? How do we make sure that we're actually answering those accurately? So this is where AI can really help our team members. How do we think about AI working side by side with our team members to kind of quickly sort through relevant information, provide a quick answer, and provide an accurate answer. And it really boils down to something at American that we're focused on, which is providing a consistent and convenient and connected experience across all of our touch points. And I will completely agree with what Karen said earlier. When we think about consistent information, it has to be across all channels. Whether our customers are going, let's say for any of us, to a website, to a mobile app, to any of our team members, how do you ensure that the information being provided at each of those touch points is the same information? And when you don't have the same information, you can drive customer behavior to feel like they need to wait in lines or pick up phones because you've driven confusion. So that's really where we can lean in and think about how you can use AI to, again, work side by side and provide that information to our team members with, speed and accuracy.
It's wonderful. I have an add-on question, but before I go there, I want to see if any of the other panelists have anything to add to that, what you just said.
I just think it's a really good point, the last piece that you made, which is AI is really a step change for us in many ways, but it is when it's side by side with the human, right? And I think that is really important. And sometimes we can get carried away in the peak and the noise of what AI can do and bring. But I do also think there's still a place, certainly in the contact centers, from our perspective, where we do still need that human engagement and validation check with the interactions and where we use AI. So I think AI can take away some of those more simple day-to-day asks and challenges that come in to allow our teams to focus on the more complex piece, but I definitely see them go hand in hand. And I love the fact you brought that up.
I think it's also helpful. We know that AI can provide a lot of great information. We know that our frontline agents can do the same, but it's ensuring that what does that experience look like for our customers, that they don't have to repeat to a system, to a frontline agent over and over again. It isn't just showing off the data that everyone has, but it's making it so that it's a great experience for the customer at the end.
So I'll add on to that, David, right? So if you think about all the conversation that we have had so far, it's about how do you make the customer experience great. And in my mind, I'll classify a typical architecture or a go-forward architecture as you have an engagement layer, which is the mobile app, the kiosks, your live agent, maybe it's an AI agent, chatbots, IVR, CRM, things of that sort. And then you have an intelligence layer, right, which is AI, which could be knowledge AI, language AI, video AI, conversational AI, it could be a legal AI, it could be an operations AI, things that are digital twins, right? Equivalents of roles that are being provided by humans today, but could potentially be assisted by an intelligence layer. And then you have the infrastructure layer, which is your on-prem cloud and such. It's left to organizations to decide how well do they integrate all this to provide an excellent customer service. There was one question about jobs, and if you think about how do you bring all this together, right? If AI can do a number of things today. It can do conversational stuff. It can do call and query summarization. It can do response drafting. It could do real-time personalized coaching for agents. It can do accent neutralization, language translation, a number of things. It's once again, it comes back to who's running the contact center operations. Do they have the nerve to start trying these things and put it into production? Maybe some of this will fail, but do it in a contained environment such that the failures can be minimized and you can build on that and deliver success. You had asked another question about the giving a unified journey across travel providers, and Francesca spoke about the connected trip. Let's take the example of airlines, right? So IATA is the industry organization which has come up with something called One Order. Today we have GDSs which distribute inventory across airlines. And so if I'm a person who wants to go from, say, Tampa to someplace in Europe, the number of airlines that I need to transfer to get to my destination is taken care of by interlining by the GDS systems. But the number of records that they use today is different. So I need to know what is my record number with this airline, what is my record number with another airline. When One Order gets implemented, it's just one record that the entire travel chain would know in the aviation sector. We need something similar to that encompasses hotels, cruise lines, rental cabs, so on and so forth. And it has to be an industry-led initiative to bring this to fruition. Today, travel providers are trying to attract most of the customers directly to their own channel so that they can minimize expense on intermediaries. How do you do this in this context is something that requires a lot of thought.
That's great. You touched on a lot of things, and one of them was an area where I was going to follow up with is we know that the objective is a connected experience, like what we just talked about. However, there's different systems, there's different policies, there's different needs, right? Because there will be a need for competitive things to stay within the enterprise, of course. But then there'll be things that aren't necessarily competitive, but which impact the customer journey. So what I'm hearing, and I've thought for some time, but maybe we talk about it a little bit, is there something the industry, and I'm just going to use that term loosely, and the industry could be you all here, the industry could be the SaaS companies and the AI technologists out there, part of that industry. Do you think there's something we can do differently to make sure we drive the agenda forward around sharing of data? Think of it as like federation of data for the purposes of delivering that connected experience. Is there something that the technology companies should be doing, and maybe they're not listening just yet? Or are we all sort of just in our lane and we're not thinking about out the other lane that our partners are with? Hopefully that makes sense. So Kim, it looks like you might be chomping at the bit to say something.
I think it's just we're so early in this journey of AI, especially generative AI, right? We're all kind of dabbling in it and learning, and it's going to be working together to truly understand the opportunities that we have in this space, and doing so smartly, doing so safely, and just continuing to learn. But I think we need to be doing exactly what we talked about earlier, testing and learning and moving forward to see, and using data. I heard data was used earlier. That's exactly what we need to do, is use data to understand, are we actually moving the dial in what we're doing? So we're fortunate to have partnered with ASAPP for some of our digital channels on information that is shared with both our customers and the user interface that some of our team members use. And so it's a great partnership where we're doing that hand in hand together.
Wonderful. And then Francesca, I know this seems to be like an area of you've already been thinking about it. You use the term connected experience, and Booking.com could provide some significant expertise in helping the industry drive forward. So I ask you specifically, from that perspective, is there anything that the rest of the industry could do to support you in your initiatives, or any of the technology companies? And I'll just lay that on the table.
Yeah, I mean, it is early days, right? And also it's there's an element of sensitivity to the information that we deal with. So reality of how practical that is and what the opportunities are probably need to balance themselves out a little bit. But I certainly think, yes, there is opportunity there for information or behaviors or to be shared that could help drive a more seamless, connected experience across multiple different verticals that we have. So, for example, from the flights industry to accommodation, and something we're spending a lot of time on. And I guess this is where you're angling, and potentially if we had a little bit more insight from some of these industries, let's say the flight industry, is we are also trying to understand what is the typical behavior if someone has, let's say, booked a trip for family, and there is a cancellation to a flight, and then there's a knock-on consequence to their accommodation, etc. Do they actually want to be cancelling, or do they want to be rebooking, or what's the typical behaviors of someone that's in that situation? And I think there's some learnings there that you could potentially say arguably could be tapped into, but again, there just needs to be a trade-off, right? In terms, there's a lot of sensitive information that is managed in this industry, and making sure that we balance that with sharing information that's not crossing that line is going to be really important.
Wonderful. And I poke at that one, not to make us all feel a little uncomfortable, but rather because we're all, I mean, the panelists, I'll speak for the, about on the panelists, you're all experts, right? As is, right, we've got Infosys, and I know ASAP is very much an interested party. And I think we all have an opportunity or a responsibility, maybe I'll even go that strong, to be thought leaders here. And in thought, when you're a thought leader, sometimes you're throwing out ideas that there's 15 reasons why you couldn't do it, but there might be one reason why you could, right? And then you embark on doing something significantly different. And that's how disruption happens. So that's the spirit of why I bring it up, and hopefully that makes sense. So going back, maybe to Kim, so when you're already a little further down the path, and thank you for helping us out with some things here. When considering the implementation of generative AI, obviously, one of the things that helps you move that use case forward and allows you to have the nerve that we talked about to put a project in place and implement, maybe it's new technology, new processes. It's all, at the end of the day, it's all about outcomes, right? And how do you think about driving the outcome with a project with generative AI? And I'm asking it as loosely as I can, not to put you in not to try to answer anything for you. So how do you think about outcomes and deploying technology to the processes to drive the outcome?
Well, we should, in any investment that we're looking at, regardless of if it's AI or not, I would hope all of us are thinking about our outcomes and the value in which we derive from what we're implementing. And I think when we think about AI, you're thinking about those outcomes you're trying to achieve and how you can improve upon those metrics. So I was talking earlier about information that would go to both customers and team members. So you could be thinking about accuracy. How accurate is the information that we're providing? We could think about speed. If we introduce a tool that provides information to our team members, but yet it takes a long time to actually get that information teed up with AI to that team member, then that wasn't something that we should introduce, because you're actually increasing the amount of time the team member is using to find the information. So speed, we have to be considering speed. And then at American, we're very much focused on ensuring that we are building tools and technologies and experiences that our customers value. So how are we using data to understand if we introduce anything around AI? How are we using data to understand if it's valuable to our customers? Some of the things, if we're thinking about the future of AI, how can we be proactive? We've used that a few times on this webinar. How can we be proactive in ensuring customers know and have what they need for their travel journey? If customers have booked a ticket with American Airlines, and we know that in the past they've had a wheelchair request, then we should be able to tee that up to remind the customer or ensure that they know that for the future, so we can make their travel easier. So I think using data to ensure that you are driving the outcomes you intended, and you have those KPIs in place to track those improvements, then we can quickly solve problems and move forward.
Wonderful.
Thanks, David. So when you think about ROI, right, any initiative that you take up, especially if it's new technology, if it's transformation, we typically tend to use what we call the value realization methodology, right? You identify, in this case, it could be revenues, it could be cost, it could be customer experience possibly on the top, right? This contact center operations, and break that down into how are each one of these metrics getting impacted by the initiative that I'm going to put in. It could be average handle time, it could be call avoidance, it could be reducing agent turnover, a number of metrics depending on what specific idea that you're implementing. Tied back to one of these three on the top, and I think it'll come out as, is it going to have an ROI or not?
Wonderful.
Can I just also add, I just absolutely support what Kim is saying about customer value, because I think one of the concerns that I have is, everybody loves the new buzzwords and loves the new technology, and people are barreling down this path, and everybody wants to do something, and there's pressure within your organization to do something with AI, I'm sure. But does the customer really value it? And I think to always question that is so important. We might think it's very easy. We might, we're inside, we're right there with it. But does a customer really think that some of this stuff is really truly helpful to them, or do we just know it's better for us? And if we always question that as we're going through any of these projects, I think the projects would be healthier moving forward.
I love that, Karen. I think that was one of the things, even when you talk about conversational AI, at what point is it so good that it's too good? Is it authentic? Do they feel tricked? Is it deception versus, wow, this is an amazing experience. I really like what you shared.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you all. So I think probably a natural extension of this conversation is a question we were thinking about teeing up anyway. And this is where I was going to bring you back into it, Kumar. So if you think about all of the opportunities and connecting the dots with what you were saying, is there value to the customer or is there just value to us? What are some of the jobs or the tasks to be done that will drive like an economic impact to fund such programs at the same time as improving the employee experience and the customer experience? What do you think? And then we can go around the horn with the rest of the team here. Like, what are some of the jobs that you just love to give to AI to say, do this because this might be problematic, difficult, repetitive, and we're inconsistent at delivering it or whatever it might be. But I'll quiet down now and ask you for your thoughts on that, Kumar.
Sure. So in the context of contact center operations, right, there are several challenges that we run into. One is your the call volume is something that you cannot predict unless it is peak seasons. That is something that but disruptions happen and then your volume goes up. Second is it's a very tight labor market. You don't have enough people and there's high turnover. Right? These are some of the typical characteristics of a contact center operation. So I would think about the jobs as, if you take the first part, right, which is having enough agents to service your calls and backfilling resources, the attrition that you have, having an AI assisted module to bring your team up to speed as quickly as possible, right? That is something that's going to be super important. Second is, it's not that these teams are working in a static environment. Systems are getting changed, new rules are coming in, new policies are coming in. So there has to be a top-up intelligence layer which continuously trains the existing agents on what's changed, what should you expect as business rolls on. Third, in terms of call avoidance, right? I think Kim spoke about this, about using machine learning. You can use predictive analytics to figure out what's coming down the road, right? And making sure that you're giving the call center supervisor enough notice period such that he or she can staff up or staff down. That's another thing that you could do. There are a number of queries that can be avoided in the first place, right? You spoke about having to missing the flight and trying to book stuff on your own. Today, airlines have the capability to predict that, okay, this flight is getting delayed. I need to provide an option to my customer that he or she can choose what is the next best flight that they can take. And that actually is avoiding a call that is potentially going to come in. Another one is the refund claims process, where you missed a flight for whatever reason, the airline is supposed to give you, or hotel is supposed to give you a refund. You know that the customers are going to call you unless you let them know ahead of time that these are the things that are happening. Your claim is due. You're going to be getting paid in this date. That's another avoidance technique. So I think it's a mixture of all of these. These are the things that come to my mind if I think about what jobs would I give to an AI intelligence layer.
Wonderful. So what I'm going to ask, so Casey, any reaction to that? Anything to add to it? And then as you think about that, I'd also like, then I'm going to go to Francesca and then obviously to Kim and Karen.
Yeah, I look at it as a little bit less of the extremes. It isn't one or the other where we're just going to completely replace something that has human interaction. And so I look at a lot of the AI opportunities to enhance the experience. So I'm just trying to think of the analogy. So like I've been in this industry of contact centers for over 28 years, and I've seen what the role of a data scientist is. Maybe that job continues, but it has different dynamics. It is a different role because we are able to leverage AI and still use the expertise that our data scientists bring in, which is still extremely valuable. It's just in a different way. So I think an example is historically data, information capture, like you can go into reporting portals and you have all the information. But what we're shifting into now is don't just give me the data. tell me what it means, teach it and learn from it and grow in that industry. That's the difference. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we're replacing all human interaction, but it's just the dynamics of how we will enable our frontline agents, enable our center of excellence teams to be more successful with that. Just looking across the board, yes, there are always going to be metrics like AHT reduction and things like that. But I think part of it just comes back to what is it that our customers value? If I were to ask somebody, you absolutely love to talk to our frontline agents. In some situations, they do. But in other situations, they really just wanted to book the reservation and get into that hotel. So it's really going back to understanding what is truly driving the decisions that we make, and then leveraging this phenomenal new space of technology that we can leverage.
Wonderful. Thank you. Francesca, anything to add? And keep in mind, you're reacting to both Kumar and Casey at this point, if you would.
Yeah, I was just going to go back to something that Kumar said, because I think it's very front of mind, just having gone through peak. But definitely timed productivity for me is somewhere that I think AI can really help our step change, right? If we're ramping up with agents or we're getting new people on board, the amount of time that we can reduce to getting them actually productive by providing them with the right information, the next steps they need to take, summarizing the information that comes in from customers, there's a huge potential and opportunity there. And yes, of course, driving down the AHT is a driver, but for us, we're really looking at customer satisfaction. So if we can equip our agents as much as possible with as many enhancements and tools that help them be more productive and focus on the more challenging topics and actually spend their time there, as opposed to scurrying around to finding things and not quite knowing how a new process works, or not knowing where the knowledge article is on a particular topic or how a process works, then that for me is one of the biggest advantages I think that I see AI bringing a contact center.
Love it. And what about you yourself? What are your thoughts, Karen? And then we'll go to you, Kim.
Yeah, I agree 100% with Francesca. It's probably one of the most exciting parts of this AI discussion is having enough information to provide to a frontline staff, quickly and easily, so they don't have to scramble, but also the customer data, and making, I'd love for an agent to be able to see a summary of the last 5 calls that the customer had made and be able, you're so much more equipped to help them in a kinder, more generous way if you have the whole rundown of where this person has been in their journey. I think that's the fun bit. That's where you actually start to differentiate yourself. And that's where customers start to say, oh, wait a minute, you do know me. We do have a relationship, and in a very expedient way. So I'm very, very excited about that aspect. I think it's quite cool.
Great. And Kim?
Yeah, nothing more to add. I think everyone hit this spot on to what I would think as well. How can we get the information? How can we have training faster? And then the customer aspect of it. What were your last 5 calls like? What were your last 5 flights like? Did you have a regular operation that impacted you, and that I now have the information to be able to support you better as a team member? So it's just exciting the direction that we can go.
Wonderful. So I have 2 more things, and I think we'll have, in order to wrap on time at 55 past the hour, I think we'll have time for one of the questions that came in. So, but two more quick things is, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it is, we all see a lot of opportunity. And what we've talked about so far is, opportunity, things that can be done, jobs that can be done, assisting the agents, augmenting the agents, improving their experience, improving the customer experience. But at the same time, everyone hasn't deployed yet, right? Not only on this call, but within the industry. And what I wake up every morning and I wonder, like, what's holding us back? And there's specific, I feel like, and I'm not paranoid, but I feel like there's something holding us back, not so much as an industry, but like, why aren't we all moving faster to this? Is there some concerns that might slow us down, whether it's privacy, hallucinations, whatever it might be? What do you think about that? And maybe Francesca, I'll start with you. Are there anything that we haven't talked about that you in the back of your mind you think, well, if you address that, we can all move faster?
Yeah, so I think it's a tricky question for me to answer, I think. But in simple terms, I would say we're still very early in the journey, right? We really are, in terms of really knowing the value and the productivity gains that it can actually deliver. But then on the flip side, there are the privacy issues, there are the hallucination pieces. And I think there's been an element of us potentially just holding off till some of those pieces get ironed out a little bit more. I think they are now. I think we're in a much better position now. And I think this is going to be the pivotal turning point where you see a lot of new innovations and capabilities rolled out across the industry. I think now is definitely the time. But I would say that people have been holding off because of some of those concerns to date. And then also, you know, in terms of really understanding who do you want to partner with on making this happen? Is it something you want to partner with? Is it something you want to build in-house? How do we want to take it further? And those are some of the other decisions I think that potentially have been holding people back a little bit. Is this really something we want to delve into and actually build ourselves? Is this something we really want to partner with someone else? And how much knowledge do they really have on such a new area that we're still exploring and we don't know much about? So yes, in short to your question, I think there are some reservations, but I do think we're now in a very different stage, and I think there's going to start to be quite a bit of a quick tumble of new capabilities rolled out across the industry.
Wonderful. Does anyone want to add? Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, just to tag on to that, I would say that I think as companies start to enter into this, new space, it'll be important to introduce a governance framework around any AI efforts. So how do you ensure that you have key stakeholders from around your entire company, across your entire enterprise, to ensure that you're using AI tools securely and responsibly? How do you ensure that you have folks from privacy and security and your legal teams? How do you have your IT teams or technology teams? Is it a build it? Is it a buy it? Like Francesca was just talking about, your customer teams. Everyone needs to be hand in hand as you're thinking about building a framework so that you enter into this space the right way.
Wonderful. And I'm looking at the clock. Time flies. My, oh my, does it fly when you're having fun. We have a minute or less. And one thing that I'd like to throw out, and somebody just jump on. I don't think we'll solve it today in a minute, right? Might not even solve it in a week. But what are your thoughts around, once we get to the point where we all deploy AI for these jobs to be done that we were just kind of kicking around? What do you think about, differentiation? If we're all doing AI, how do you differentiate, right? And when you're doing AI, how do you think about alignment to your brand? So we don't have a whole lot of time. We could spend an hour just on that, I think. But does anyone want to offer anything up as you're thinking about it? Casey, would you like to give it a go?
Nope.
Okay, it's a tricky one, right? Kim, anything from you or Karen or anybody else? Kumar?
I'll go, right? So I
Please.
think differentiation with AI, I think it boils down to what differentiates you as a company, right? Your culture, your processes, your people. The same things will get diffused into AI as well, right? How you think about customers, how do you think about your processes? That's what is going to translate into AI. While AI is artificial intelligence, a lot of the input to that is from the employees of the company, right? Yes, you will have partners that you're working with, but the direction is going to be determined by the company. So in my mind, I think it will just reflect what the underlying company is about.
Yeah, and maybe we just all keep it in mind as we move forward in this exciting time. So with that, unfortunately, we're at the end of our time, and we don't have any time to go through the questions that have come in. But thank you to all the attendees. We're grateful for your time and attendance. Thank you to the panelists for sharing your expertise. It looks like you all have a handful of new friends. Please keep in touch, and let's solve some of these very difficult and wonderful opportunities we have in front of us. And this is being recorded, and everybody will get a copy of this recording in the next day or two. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.